Hello viewers, welcome to AAU Talks here on AAU TV, and my name is Kwesi Sam. Today's show is dedicated to the African Union Commission. We are looking at the Agenda 2063, the role of the young people on the continent. And I have in the studio three wonderful young guests who are going to do justice to the topic, Agenda 2063, and the role of young people on the continent. Before we start the discussion, and then before I introduce my guest, we want to take the African Union's anthem. And from there, I will introduce my guest, and then the show begins. Stay tuned.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny, our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice, honor. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and toil together to give the best we have to Africa, the cradle of mankind and fount of culture, our pride and hope at break of dawn. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite.
That was an inspiring anthem of the African Union, and I believe that I know definitely a lot of us is the first time of we listening to the African Union's anthem. Most of us may not have heard it before, and so you are just privileged to hear the African Union's anthem on the AAU Talks here on the AAU TV. Before we went for the anthem, I told you I was going to introduce my guest to you, and then we start the show. Now, the first guest to be introduced on the show this afternoon is Mr. Schneider Kweku Ankoma, who happens to be a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. Mr. Ankoma, you are welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
I'm fine.
Great. All right. The second person to be introduced is one of the lovely females that we have here at the Association of African Universities, in the person of Miss Irene Dufie Adai, and she is also a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. How are you doing, Miss Adai?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
Yes, and thank you for having me.
I can see the expression on your face that you are so much excited.
Of course, it's Africa.
It's Africa.
Yeah.
Excited. We have our last guest, and not the least, in the person of Mr. Samuel Japan, and he is also a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. You are welcome, Mr. Japan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwesi.
How are you also?
I am good. I'm very well.
Great. So this is a happy day for us, and most especially as Africans and young people. And you'd bear with me that somewhere around 2013, the African Union celebrated its Golden Jubilee. That was 50 years. And one of the key things that came out of the 50th anniversary was the establishment or the Agenda 2063 that sought to give a roadmap or a development agenda for the continent for the next 50 years. And I believe that a lot of us here may have heard it before, or may have got an opportunity to go through the entire document. The document has 7 aspirations, and that is what we are going to discuss one after the other and see if, as young people on the continent, we have any place in the Agenda 2063. I tell my friends that the agenda is for the next 50 years, but I'm not too sure how many young people are aware of this agenda. Mr. Japan, how many
Yes.
young people do you think are aware of the Agenda 2063?
Well, comparatively, looking at the SDGs and then Agenda 2063, not a lot of people know about these agenda, even though they are Africans and even though they've gone through the system, through our educational system and all that. This could be that there's no awareness or publicity of this agenda, and also our schools do not also focus on such agenda. I think those who are doing courses in the development field might have an idea about it, but not into details like how somebody who is into the or in the African Youth Charter would do. Okay. So I think there's still room for improvement in terms of promotion and awareness creation.
Great.
Yes.
Now, 25th May was a holiday, Ms. Adai, and I was so surprised. We interviewed one student and who said, I know today's a holiday, but I don't know why it is a holiday.
Yes.
And are you surprised to hear some of these things? Africans, we know it's a holiday we are celebrating, but we don't know anything about it.
No, I don't think it's surprising because generally sensitization in Africa is very low. And when we go on the street, mostly asking questions generally pertaining about Africa, we find out that most people don't know about it. And it's how we educate our folks, it's how we educate our people on the continent. Because most times these things are seen on the internet, and looking at Africa, there are not many people who have access to those documents. So it's not surprising someone in Africa doesn't know of the African Union holiday.
Mr. Nkrumah, are you surprised?
Okay, I'm not surprised. You know, in reference to the first question you asked Samir Japan, he said that he made reference to the fact that we have SDGs. They are all, you know, parts that has been carved for the next generation, and then the Africa we want. Looking at the publicity surrounding these two documents, you can see that SDGs are far ahead of the Agenda 2063, mainly because if you look at the SDGs, there are sponsored programs around the SDGs, but then it's not, you know, the same for Agenda 2063. So if you look at it, I wouldn't be surprised that we have most of the young people not aware of the Agenda 2063.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. Now, let's look at the agenda itself and how we can help our younger generation. Because whether we like it or yes, the people who crafted Agenda 2063 may not be there or may not be alive 50 years on. And it is you and I, and probably people who are younger than us, who are going to champion or spearhead the content of the agenda. What do you think must be done as a continent to ensure that the young people embrace the Agenda 2063 before we even go into the details of what the agenda talks about? Mr. Depo.
Well, for me, I would say the first aspect will be education. And our folks need to be educated about our own agenda. I'm always tempted to say that the SDGs are created for Africa, since it's normally the implementation phase is always in Africa, ignoring what we actually did or what our leaders actually sat to write for the development of our continent. So I think education and awareness creation will be good if we want to really achieve this. Looking at the fact that in 50 years' time, it is us, it is you and I who will be in the driving seats.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Adai, do you have anything to add?
To add more to that, when we look at the Agenda 2063, it spans for 50 years. And in 50 years, those who are in charge of the agenda will not be there. And therefore, it is necessary that the youth, those coming, would be in the known of the agenda. And so, as he already put out, there should be mass education. I think necessarily every government in Africa should make it a priority to put the agenda out. We know the aspirations. They are very good, and then if we are able to follow the aspirations, I think the Africa we want by 50 years is achievable. It's nothing new in the agenda, but since we don't know much about it, we've not put much effort into it.
Okay. So how do we ensure that the young people know much about the Agenda 2063?
Okay, Kwesi, on my way to work every day, I pass by a school, you know, on the is it taxi rank to Rolling Circle stretch.
Okay.
There's a school, on the wall of the school, they have all the SDG goals. They have a picture of all the SDG goals on the wall. Every day I get to the place and I look at it, I pick something out of it. Likewise, I'm sure the students in the school, they see the wall every day, they look at the goals, and then at least they pick something. You know, most of the time, if you see something all the time, it sticks one way or the other, and then you find ways to work around some of the things you see. So I'm sure that the SDG, just as how it has been publicized, we can do same for Agenda 2063. So maybe I go to a place, there's a wall, and then we have all the aspirations on the wall, infographics. I'm sure I'll be able to appreciate it, and then I'll be able to adapt it.
Brilliant submissions. But let's move a step further. What comes to mind at all when you hear of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want? Before we go into what is in the books and what is in the document, what comes to your mind? The Africa we want. Ms. Adai, the Africa we want. What and how do you want to see Africa in the next 50 years, even before we look at the 7 aspirations?
I want the Africa where people would be in a rush to come see, where people would want to come stay without any fear, without any fear of thinking about getting malaria or dying. I want an Africa where there is peace. I want an Africa where democratically everyone can express themselves. I want an Africa where a movement of people, it's done, and then there is no restrictions. Businesses can move on. Enterprises can just form without troubles. That is the Africa we want. In my explanation, I want a perfect Africa. Africa where everything is in place. That is the Africa I want.
Is there any perfect continent?
We strive to achieve that. I think it's not far-fetched. We can get it.
I like that. That's great. Yes, Mr. Akuma, what do you have to say?
Okay.
What comes to mind? Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. What comes to mind? General?
Okay. We say Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. You know, it's ambitious. You know, sometimes it's kind of they've given you the opportunity to say, you know, this is what I want and that's what I get. And so, me as a youth, I want an Africa that is inclusive.
Okay.
You know, not limited to, you know, a particular thing, but not limited to gender, not limited to any group of people. You know,
Inclusive.
in all spheres, we want people to be represented and nobody left behind. That is the Africa I want.
Nobody left behind. I think I like
Yes.
that point also. Mr. Japan?
For me, I want an Africa where we drive our growth ourselves. An Africa where our development is being pushed by ourselves and not foreign interference or
without aid.
be relying on aid or something. If you've watched Black Panther, I want a Wakanda Africa.
That's excellent.
Yes.
I think I already love your submissions. They are very much insightful and excellent. But let's go deeper into the 7 aspirations and let's hear from you how we think young people can fit into the agenda and how we will be able to ensure that by the next 50 years, maybe probably you'll be 77, 78. I will meet you somewhere and then we'll remember this day. But let's look at the first aspiration. The first aspiration talks about a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. And this one, the SDGs really spans and talks about it a lot. Let me start with you, Mr. Japan.
Okay.
What can be done or what must be done to ensure that throughout the 50 years, I don't want to say that at the end of the 50 years,
Yes,
because
throughout the
growth
50,
and development
yes.
is a process. What must be done to ensure that we have a prosperous Africa where there is inclusive growth and development?
Well, looking at the current trend that we are in now, to have an inclusive growth, there is some few things that you need to look at, some few elements in the across the continent that you need to look at. One is creating employment.
Okay.
So if there is employment for the youth who are coming up, one, it will reduce crime and all that. And two, there is the need for Africa to feed itself, not relying on foreign aid and other things. So there is the need for Africa to push its own agenda. There is also the need for technology. We also need to embrace technology in Africa. And we need to respect their laws. And there's the need for Africa to trade with itself. If we really want to grow, there's no need trading with maybe China. It is important to open up or liberalize trade.
Markets.
But what about inter-country
National
or international trade?
Okay.
So an Africa that wants to grow needs to look within. An Africa that wants to grow needs to educate its people. An Africa that wants to grow needs to employ its people.
That's excellent. Let me get to you. I think you guys are blowing my mind already.
Yeah.
But Ms. Adai, based on the submissions that he has given, you know, we must. The problem has always been, how do we do it? How do we ensure? He made mention of having employment for the young people on the continent, making sure that we drive our own processes. How do we get this done?
Okay, first of all, I think Africa as a continent, our main challenges are our institutions. I think we are one of the continents with the weakest institutions. If we go through the checks, we know the institutions are there, but they are not implementing what it's supposed to do. And even if they are implementing, they are war with corruption and bribery scandals. And then we don't look at the future. We always think about what we would get. So most times it is difficult to get all these things done. It is difficult to get the continent pushing forward. When you look at Ghana, when you look at Nigeria, when you look at Rwanda, it's a problem that cuts across. So until these institutions are being empowered, until stricter rules, until more education are being done to give these institutions more power to work independent of all the arms of government that interferes in what we have, I think then we will get there. But when we have a country or a continent where everyone can meddle in any affairs, nepotism, favoritism, and everything it's going on, I don't think this would help us develop as a continent.
Ms. Adai, you have a background in international relations.
Of course.
What is so different from the other continent? What is so different? Why is it that their institutions are working, and every year, every day in Africa we talk about having a strong or stronger institutions? It looks like we have sung this rhyme over and over again, but the problem still exists. What is so different? Is it about the people? Is it about their mindset? What is it?
Thank you. When you look at the other developed countries and you look at their institutions, if you look at how they are educated, if you look at how they are set up, the mindset that they are coming with is a mindset for them to prosper. But when we are in Africa, as compared to them, you're going through hardships, you're going through problems. So immediately you get there, your mind is already set up to find more money for yourself, to find wealth for yourself.
And not to make the country better.
Yes, not to make the country better, but rather to enrich yourself. But these countries that we talked about, they have procurement standard department that goes through everything that goes on. But here, we sit down, we do our sole sourcing for our procurement, and that doesn't work that way in those countries. They go through stricter rules, stricter regulations, and there are punishments for that if you go against it. And that doesn't work here in our continent. So if we need Africa to develop, we need to put these things in place. And we need to make sure that these policies are implemented, not just in the constitution, but implemented.
Great. inclusive growth. It means that it should be all sector approach.
Yeah.
Everybody, women, men, young people, must all come on board to ensure that we are able to chart our own development. How do we do this? Looking at the fact that you, Mr. Japan mentioned the fact that unemployment is really a bane on our continent. How do we solve this issue?
Okay, Kwesi Sam, thank you. They've all made important submissions.
Yeah.
Let me start from Dufie's submission. She was talking about institutions that should work. You know, there is an argument. We say that, is it institutions before development or development before institutions? Do we need to develop and then we get to a point that we realize that our institutions are not working and then we question the institutions and they change? Or we develop our institutions and, you know, we also, that will lead to development. You know, that is an issue, it's a debate, but then I'm always for the fact that we need to develop our institutions side by side, our own development, so that the two will complement each other. And then touching on the sustainable development, I'm sure that Africa, you know, to achieve the goal that we set for ourselves, one key area that we need to focus on is agriculture. We are neglecting agriculture, we are sidelining agriculture, but then if we need to develop, we need to focus on agriculture and not just any agricultural practices or outmoded agricultural practices, but then modernized and mechanized agricultural practices. Now, when it comes to that, I ask myself, then how do we do it? That is where the youth will come in. So the role of the youth, then we come in. Now we are in the age whereby agriculture, we need to seriously mechanize agriculture. And then if you say that it should start from my grandfather, you are making a mistake. Because if you go into this precision farming services and all those issues, you cannot start from my grandfather. My grandfather doesn't know much about it. And so this is the time that we, the youth, need to own this process. Go into agriculture, adapt this precision farming services, adapt this mechanized farming services. That being said, talking about inclusion, we need not leave everybody out. We need to also focus on the role of each and every person, especially women. You know, studies have shown that when women go into agriculture, you know, the poverty, you know, there's reduction in poverty. Rate, yes, all those things. So we need to go into that, check a lot of things in agriculture system, land tenure systems, land ownership, all those things we need to take into consideration. If you come to Africa, our land is owned basically by, you know, men, and then the women need to support. But this needs to change.
But is it still the same?
No, it's still the same. Mostly it's the house head that owns the land. The woman, you know, joins, but the system needs to change. Women should be able to own their own land. They need to be able to, you know, go into agriculture, and then, you know, it's going to reduce poverty. And then through that, we are going to get the development that we so much need in Africa. Okay,
let me get to Mr.
Yes.
Japan. Especially talking about agriculture.
Yes.
A lot of us, I don't know how many of us are willing to go into agriculture. Looking at how agriculture has been packaged for us as a continent. How can we inspire a lot of our young people to take advantage of the growing trends of how we are kind of mechanized agriculture, and then ensure that we are able to feed ourselves, we are able to even export and then get some revenue to develop our continent.
Okay, thank you very much, Pakwesi. So, Ankama made mention of the fact that our land tenure system needs to be reviewed, and ownership of land in Africa needs to be looked at very carefully if we want to mechanize agriculture. So you move into, let me use Ghana as an example. You go into maybe Volta region, and the land there is not for one person, or it belongs to a whole family, and you see that the plot of land in there, all the acres available to me will be just maybe one. Whilst if you go elsewhere, one person can farm more than 10 acres. So that needs to be looked at. If a family land, then there should be a situation whereby there can be leases of land whereby one person can farm more than 3 acres, 4 acres, 5 acres. You understand? And also there need to be education, more education, or to mechanize agriculture. Our technological institution, our research institution needs to focus on building more machines and then removing the outmoded form of farming from our system. I'm not happy to say that a lot of farming practices in Ghana use the hoe and the cutlass, which is way outmoded.
The simple farm tools.
The simple farm tools. So what are our students, what are our lecturers who are doing what agricultural engineering doing? You understand? What happened to building machines, post-harvest machines and all these things to help our agricultural system in Africa? It needs to suit our system so that we can be able to move into full mechanization of agriculture. So one, we need to look at our non-tenure system, the way ownership of land is being done in Africa, and two, how to build machines to support these movements into mechanization of agriculture.
To add to this, as he talked about the reason why it's important to mechanize agriculture and all the necessary equipment. And when you look at this, it's not far-fetched. Looking at the technical vocational education, these are people who are cut out for such programs, for such innovations.
Yeah.
And so if this sector of education is well equipped, is well financed, I think they would be the right people we can consult when it comes to agriculture. But it seems they have been left behind. Nobody is interested in the technical and vocational education. There are some countries, and when you go to Japan, when you go to China, they are the ones making the country grow more because they are the ones on the ground doing the practical stuff, giving them the machines to do their work. It's not same in Africa. We can't boast of a TVET institution that are making agriculture machineries. We can't boast of any TVET institution that is making use of what they have because first of all, they are under-resourced. So we have to get it from there. We have to pick it from there. See the importance, see their essence. They can make chairs, they can make tables. We don't need always to import from outside. We can get it done here.
So
Yeah.
is it okay?
And also, agricultural education needs to be made attractive. You know, as time goes on, our current educational system, and I'm fortunate to be at AAU, and then I've been able to analyze the trend of enrollments according to program basis. And then the result that keeps coming up is that there's been a plummeted decline in the agricultural colleges in Ghana. For example, I'm basing it on Ghana because the pilot project is in Ghana here. And you could see that as time goes on, the enrollment, enrollment in agric keeps on going down. And then you see that enrollment in humanities and business keeps going up. You understand? Now we have graduate unemployment just because of the way they were educated.
Okay.
They took the path of business and humanities, and these sectors are choked. The financial sectors are not employing that much. What happened to the agricultural sector? Make it attractive, make people be intrigued to go into agric, and we will have results.
I think the African Development Bank is doing fantastically well with their High Five project, where they have a lot of dreams and aspirations of making sure that they support a lot of farmers in Africa with farm implementation tools and other equipment, so that we're able to farm and then feed ourselves. Because it's so amazing that, and it's sometimes a bit shameful to just talk about the things that we import as a continent.
Rice.
Things that rice, for it, because we have the land, we have all the resources, we can grow rice, we can grow food for ourselves. But the problem is, are we ready to accept what we have as a continent?
Okay. Kwesi, it's not like we are not ready to accept what we have. We are ready to accept it, but then are we ready to work for it? That is the question we ask ourselves. We would like a continent where we do not import rice anymore, but then we produce rice. We do not want to import some of the basic agriculture stuff. We need to have it on our own, produce it on our own. So I wouldn't say, what I would say is we need to kind of do, work for it.
Okay.
And so when it comes to agriculture, for instance, we are talking about the fact that how can we make it look creative and all those things. One thing I'm looking at is, most of the land is in the rural areas. Now, the youth are migrating from the rural areas
To
to
the
the
urban
urban
centers.
areas. What is here? And then what is not there? And that is making them move.
Okay.
Sometimes you can look at it in the form of internet, technology, lighting,
Making
and
life better for ourselves.
those are some of the things that they fancy in the urban areas that makes them move. So if that is the case, then let's send all those things to the rural areas, and then they can stay there. So give them light, give them internet, and all those things, and then they'll feel better in the rural areas, stay there, and then go into agriculture. If not that, we will be in a country whereby the youth, the energetic ones who are supposed to stay in the rural areas to farm, will intend moving to the urban areas where there are no jobs. So we need to really work.
Let me quickly jump in.
Yes. Just jump in so that I can go for a quick commercial break.
Okay.
And then we
Okay. So you asked the question that why is it that we don't want what we produce?
Sure.
Yes. It's a major issue that we need to tackle. Our taste and preference has become foreign, which is something that we need to address. There's one particular dialect, or let me say food, that we produce in the northern part of Africa. Let's say in the northern part of Ghana and in the southern part of Burkina, and also in the northern of Nigeria. This food is called a fonio, which is very nutritious and it's really healthy. It's used as it can be used as rice. It has the texture of rice and also can be used as porridge and all that. Interestingly, this food is being exported, and the people who need to eat this food are not actually eating it. So we have to tackle the issue of taste and preference before we move on to, okay, let's produce more.
All right.
What if we produce and then there's no demand for it?
Great.
Yes.
I think you
So-
hold your breath and let me go for a quick commercial break. When I
Yes.
come back, we'll look at some of the trending issues. Viewers, this is AAU Talks here on AAU TV, and we are discussing the Agenda 2063 and the role that young people play in ensuring that in the next 50 years, this agenda is achievable. We'll go for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, my guests are here to still do justice to the subject. Stay with us.
I feel so confident. The reason why I feel so confident, it's not because of maybe the courses just that I've been doing. I feel like I can do anything that I want to do. If you tell me to do something, even if I don't know how to do it, I'll learn, I'll take my time, I'll study hard, I'll probably not sleep for a month, but I'll do it because that's what Carnegie Mellon University have taught me, to work hard, to read hard, to spend more hours doing research, and then at the end of the
Thank you.